Welcome back to the Airbnb Superhost Secrets podcast, where we help you unlock all the secrets to becoming a top-rated host.
Absolutely.
Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive into a question that can really make or break your hosting experience.
Yeah,
Which Airbnb cancellation policy is right for you?
it's a big one.
You might think it's a simple choice, but buckle up
Yeah.
because there are actually 8 different cancellation policies,
Wow, 8.
plus a non-refundable option.
It's true.
Yes.
It's a lot more than you think when you first start.
It's way more than meets the eye.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's really fascinating how these cancellation policies highlight, I think, the balancing act that you have to do as an Airbnb host, between attracting guests and protecting your income. And it's about finding that sweet spot that minimizes your risk without scaring away potential bookings.
It's a tough one.
Yeah.
And as Airbnb has grown, it's become even more guest-centric, which means we as hosts need to be extra strategic. So before we even get into all the weeds of every single policy, let's take a step back
Okay.
and think about your comfort level with risk.
Yeah.
How much potential income are you willing to sacrifice for the sake of flexibility?
That's the question you got to ask yourself. And it really depends a lot on your individual circumstances
Right.
and your hosting style.
Brutal.
Like for instance, if you have a single listing and you're in a very competitive market,
Yeah.
you might prioritize flexibility to get more bookings.
Right.
But on the other hand,
Yeah.
if you have multiple high-end properties, you might want to go with a much stricter policy to safeguard your investment.
It's like choosing the right tool for the job.
It is.
So let's open that toolbox.
Okay, let's do it.
And start with the most flexible option,
Right.
the flexible cancellation policy.
Okay.
This one gives guests the maximum amount of freedom, allowing them a full refund up to 24 hours before check-in.
Yep.
Sounds great in theory.
It does, but, there's always a but.
What are some of the potential pitfalls?
While it can be attractive to guests, especially the ones that, value spontaneity, it does leave hosts vulnerable to those last-minute cancellations.
Sure.
And loss of income. Imagine someone cancels like a week-long booking just a day before they're supposed to arrive.
Oh, the worst.
Yeah, that vacancy on short notice would be really hard to fill, especially if it's peak season or something.
That's a host's worst nightmare.
It is.
So if flexible is like the high-risk, high-reward option,
Yeah.
let's talk about the middle ground.
Right.
The moderate cancellation policy.
Okay.
It's the most popular on Airbnb.
It is.
And for good reason, it kind of strikes that balance.
Yeah, it gives you a full refund up to 5 days before check-in.
Go.
Which is a decent window for guests to maybe adjust their plans without penalizing hosts too harshly.
Right.
So it's a good starting point, I think, for a lot of hosts, particularly ones with mid-range listings or maybe those that are just starting out.
It's like dipping your toes in the cancellation pool before you jump into the deep end.
Exactly.
Okay, so what if you are looking for a little more protection as a host?
Okay.
That's where the firm cancellation policy comes in.
All right.
And it shifts the balance a little bit more towards the host
Yeah.
and encourages guests to be more decisive with their bookings.
With firm guests, we'll receive a full refund if they cancel at least 30 days before check-in.
Okay.
So that longer window gives the hosts a much better chance to rebook the dates if a cancellation does occur, minimizing potential income loss.
Smart.
It also kind of sends a message to the guests like, hey, I'm happy to host you, but
Yeah.
let's, be on the same page.
Let's be sure about this.
Let's be sure about
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So now let's move on to the policy that has a slightly intimidating name.
Oh.
Strict,
Okay.
but don't let that fool ya.
Okay.
This one actually offers a pretty fair balance for both sides.
I agree.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Strict allows for a full refund within 48 hours of booking, as long as the cancellation is made at least 14 days before check-in. So it's kind of like a safety net
Right.
for the guests who maybe made like an impulsive booking or accidentally selected the wrong dates,
It happens.
while still giving the host enough time to rebook.
I like it. It's a win-win.
Yeah, it is a win-win.
So the guests have that little grace period,
Yeah,
and you have time to rebook.
exactly.
Okay, so what if you're hosting like a really luxurious property
Okay.
where last-minute cancellations could be financially devastating?
Right.
Airbnb has something special for you.
They do.
The super strict policies.
Oh, yeah. This is like the VIP section of cancellation policies.
Tell me more.
Okay, so these are invite only
Okay.
and reserved for those high-end listings where the stakes are higher.
Got it.
So imagine you have this incredible villa
Yeah?
that rents for like thousands of dollars per night,
Okay.
and then last minute somebody cancels.
Ooh.
That's a major financial hit.
Yeah.
So that's where super strict comes in.
Okay, so tell me more about these elite policies. What makes them so super strict?
So there's 2 tiers.
Okay. There's super strict 30 days
Okay,
and super strict 60 days.
got it.
And with the 30-day version, guests get a 50% refund if they cancel at least 30 days before check-in.
Okay.
And with the 60-day option,
Yeah.
they need to cancel a full 60 days out to get that same 50% refund.
Wow, so these policies are like the velvet rope of the cancellation world.
They are.
High stakes, high reward.
Yeah.
Definitely not for every host.
Right.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's talk about long-term stays.
Okay.
We're talking 28 nights or more,
Yeah.
digital nomad territory.
Yeah.
What cancellation policies are available for those extended bookings?
So those have their own set of considerations.
Right.
And so the cancellation policies reflect that.
Okay.
So instead of the standard options, we have firm long-term
Okay.
and strict long-term.
Okay.
And both of those aim to protect the hosts that are, opening up their homes for extended periods of time.
So with firm long-term,
Yeah. Guests need to cancel at least 30 days before check-in for a full refund.
that's right.
And with strict long-term,
Yep.
that window shrinks to 48 hours after booking and at least 28 days before check-in for a full refund.
It makes sense though, right?
Totally.
Because those are, longer-term bookings.
With a bigger commitment.
It's a bigger commitment from both sides, and so the cancellation policies need to reflect that.
They do.
Yeah.
So this has been a whirlwind tour of the Airbnb cancellation landscape.
Yeah, it has.
We've gone from flexible to super strict,
A lot to think about.
but we're not done yet.
Oh, good.
We still have a lot more to cover.
Okay.
So in part 2 of this deep dive, we're going to explore the non-refundable option.
Okay.
We'll also delve into refund scenarios, and we'll uncover what happens when hosts need to cancel.
Oh, boy.
So stay tuned.
I can't wait.
We'll be right back.
Sounds good. Welcome back to the Airbnb Superhost Secrets podcast. We've just gone through kind of a whole spectrum of cancellation policies, from the guest-friendly, flexible, all the way to the host-protecting super strict.
Yeah.
But there is one more tool in the arsenal
Okay.
that can be a real game changer for hosts who want ultimate booking security.
Oh, you've got my attention. What are you talking about?
The non-refundable option.
Okay, the non-refundable option, yeah.
That sounds like the ultimate power move, right?
It does sound pretty powerful, like you're really minimizing those cancellations.
Yeah, you're basically offering a discount. Typically, it's around 10% in
Okay.
exchange for no refunds.
Okay.
So if a guest books under this policy and then cancels, you as the host get to keep the entire payout.
Wow.
That's a bold.
It's a bold strategy.
It is.
But it could be really effective, I imagine, for certain types of listings
Totally.
and hosting styles.
Yeah, for sure.
So I could see how that would be appealing, especially for hosts that are just kind of tired of dealing with flaky guests.
Yeah.
Or people who have premium listings where vacancy is just a bigger financial hit.
Absolutely.
But I imagine there are some exceptions to the no refund rule.
Right.
Like what happens in those unavoidable situations, like a natural disaster or a travel ban or something?
Yeah, you're right. There are always exceptions for those extenuating circumstances.
Okay.
Things like natural disasters.
Are there any specific scenarios where you've seen it be really effective?
Yeah, absolutely. It can be like a lifesaver for filling slow periods.
Okay.
Imagine you have a beach house
Yeah.
that's totally booked up in the summertime.
Right.
But in the shoulder season,
Yeah.
things really slow down.
Totally.
Offering that non-refundable discount could incentivize travelers to book those off-peak dates.
It's like a win-win.
It is.
They get a discount and you get to fill your calendar.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's switch gears for a second and talk about the other side of this.
Okay.
Refunds.
All right.
What happens when things go wrong and either a guest or a host needs to cancel?
So refunds typically come into play in 2 main scenarios. The
Mhm.
first is cancellations, which we've discussed in detail.
Right.
The second scenario involves what Airbnb calls travel incidents.
Travel incidents.
And these aren't just travel hiccups like flight delays or lost luggage.
Okay.
We're talking about situations where a guest encounters a significant issue with the listing that impacts their stay.
So it's more serious than just like a minor inconvenience.
Yeah.
What would qualify as a travel incident? What kind of issues are we talking about?
So a travel incident usually involves like a discrepancy between the listing description and reality,
Okay.
or a situation that impacts the safety or habitability of the property.
Okay.
So for example, imagine a guest arrives and the property is like completely different than the photos.
Oh, wow.
Or there are major cleanliness concerns,
Yeah.
or they can't even access the property because of a lock malfunction.
Yeah. Those are all things that would really derail your trip.
Exactly.
So if that happens to a guest, what are the steps that they need to take to request a refund?
So in those cases, Airbnb actually steps in as a mediator.
Okay.
The guest needs to contact Airbnb, explain the situation in detail, and provide supporting evidence like photos, videos, communication logs.
Smart.
And then Airbnb will review the claim and determine if they're eligible for a refund. And it's important that the guest document everything very thoroughly and demonstrate that they've made an effort to resolve the issue with the host first.
Right. It's a system that protects both parties.
Yeah.
So the guests aren't left in the lurch, but it gives hosts a chance to address the situation
Right.
before it escalates.
Exactly.
So we've talked a lot about guest cancellations and refunds.
Yeah.
But we can't forget that hosts can cancel too.
That's right.
And there's consequences for that as well.
Absolutely. Airbnb has a pretty strict policy in place
Okay.
because they want to make sure that guests have a positive and reliable experience.
Right.
So if a host cancels a confirmed reservation, there are penalties.
Okay.
And those penalties get bigger depending on the timing of the cancellation.
Okay, so penalties, that sounds serious.
Yeah.
So tell me more, like, what kind of financial hit are we talking about for hosts that cancel?
So the closer to the check-in date the host cancels, the steeper the penalty.
Okay.
So if they cancel within 48 hours of check-in or even after the guest has arrived, they're charged a hefty 50%
Wow.
of the booking amount for the unstayed nights.
Wow, so that is a pretty powerful incentive for hosts to honor those commitments.
It is.
What about cancellations made a bit further in advance?
So it does ease up a bit, but there are still consequences.
Okay.
So if a host cancels between 48 hours and 30 days before check-in,
Yeah.
it's 25% of the booking amount.
Okay.
And if it's more than 30 days before check-in, it's a 10% fee.
Okay.
But there's another consequence that's important to be aware of. Their calendar remains blocked for those dates.
Oh, so you're hit with a financial penalty.
Yeah.
And you also lose the opportunity to rebook,
That's right.
even with the sliding scale of fees.
Exactly.
It's a powerful reminder that cancellations, whether they're by guests or hosts, have real consequences.
Yeah, it's all about accountability and creating a sense of trust.
Totally.
And reliability within the Airbnb community.
Absolutely.
Oh.
We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've explored the non-refundable option, talked about refunds, travel incidents,
That's right.
uncovered the penalties that hosts face.
Yep.
But the big question remains, which cancellation policy is right for you?
The million-dollar question.
And we're going to tackle that head on in the final part of our deep dive. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the Airbnb Superhost Secrets Podcast. We spent this whole episode talking about Airbnb cancellation policies.
We have.
From flexible to super strict, but with all these options.
Yeah.
The question is, how do you as a host
Right.
choose the one that's right for you?
That's the million-dollar question. And the truth is there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Right.
It really depends on a few factors.
Okay.
Your property type,
Okay.
the location, your target market,
Yeah.
and your own personal risk tolerance.
So let's break it down.
Okay.
If you're a brand new host
Yeah.
and you're just trying to get those first few bookings,
Yeah.
what would you recommend?
I would say start with moderate.
Okay.
It's a good balance. It shows guests that you're flexible, but you still have some protection against those last-minute cancellations. And then as you get more experience and more comfortable,
Right.
you can always adjust to something stricter if you need to.
Okay, so dipping your toes in before you go to the deep end.
Exactly.
What about for those hosts that have those really high-end properties
Right.
where a vacancy could be a major financial hit?
Right. For those high-value listings, I think a stricter approach is definitely needed.
Yeah.
So strict, or even super strict if you qualify, can give you that extra layer of security.
Oh.
It kind of deters those casual browsers, and you're attracting guests who are really serious about booking.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And location plays a role too, right?
Absolutely.
If you're in a destination that's prone to unexpected changes,
Right.
like a ski resort that's reliant on snowfall.
Yeah, in those places where weather or other unpredictable factors can really influence travel plans,
Right.
a more flexible policy might be a better fit.
Yeah.
So moderate or even flexible,
Okay.
it gives guests peace of mind knowing they can adjust their plans. If Mother Nature throws a curveball.
Totally. And it could even make your listing stand out
Yeah.
if everybody else is being more strict.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about target audience.
Mm.
How does understanding your ideal guest play into this?
Yeah, so if you cater to families who often need more flexibility, moderate might be the sweet spot.
Right.
But if you primarily host business travelers
Yeah.
who have more predictable schedules, firm or strict could be a value fit.
It's like you got to put all the pieces together.
You do.
Property type, location, target guest,
It's a puzzle.
risk tolerance.
It is a puzzle.
To find that perfect cancellation policy.
It is.
What's your advice to hosts who are just feeling overwhelmed by all these options?
Honestly, don't overthink it.
Okay.
Just start with a policy that feels comfortable for you, track your cancellation rates,
Yeah,
and then adjust if you need to.
makes sense.
What works for one host might not work for another.
Right.
It's all about finding what works for you.
It's about taking control and being proactive. Okay, so before we wrap up, let's leave our listeners with one final thought to ponder.
Okay.
Instead of fearing cancellations, how can you use your cancellation policy strategically to attract the right guests and protect your income?
That's a great question.
We'd love to hear your thoughts. And that's it for this episode of the Airbnb Superhost Secrets podcast. Happy hosting.